You understand how an aviator could get a God complex after, pulling 7.5 Gs, 30 feet off the ground at 450 feet through a canyon. That was a thrill ride. Making that movie is a thrill ride from start to finish. First off, I mean, Top Gun has been one of the, I would say, 3 seminal movies that made me want to be an actor. And Tom Cruise is the guy that I looked at as that's who I want to be. Knowing that Top Gun was coming down the pipeline, I was like preparing and over preparing. I went and lived like with a bunch of pilots down. I went to Edwards Air Force Base. I went to Miramar. I was like a full fighter pilot by the time I auditioned for Tom Cruise, and did the test with him. And the test was to play Bradley Bradshaw, which is Goose's son. I really laid it all on the field. I felt so good after it. I got, calls from the casting director, and everybody's like, dude, this feels really good. I mean, it looks like it's going your direction. And then I got the call that it didn't. It happens, and it's like, it's not personal and nobody's trying to hurt you. But this one felt like one that had been like a drum roll to this moment my entire life, that I was like, yeah, this is the movie I've wanted to make since I was a kid, since saw it when I was 10 years old. And that's when I became an actor. It's literally, I saw this movie at 10 and I was like, I became an actor, and I was like, I want to be in acting classes. I want to do this at like 10. So this one felt particularly like personal. And my favorite holiday is basically like July 4th. I'm like a very patriotic dude. I come from a very patriotic family. And I basically spent that July 4th in the fetal position. It was kind of like, all right, I'll make peace with it. It's all good. I ended up tweeting something that basically said, I'm going to take down all the Tom Cruise posters off my wall. Like, maybe I'll just keep a couple. Okay, fine. The posters are staying, or something of that. About a week later, I got a call. I was at a friend's wedding in Napa, and I got a call, and it from an unknown number. And I was like, all right. So I pick it up, and it was Tom. And he's like, hey man, it's Tom. Are you around? And I was like, yeah. Well, what's up, man? And he said, no, I just want to, talk to you about, what you did in the room. It was unbelievable. That was just such a hard decision to make. And you were fantastic. I want to find something to do together. I want to find something to build together. It's what makes Tom Cruise so special as a person. He's just a really thoughtful guy. And I remember getting that call and hanging up and being like, if I'm going to go out, going out with Tom Cruise as a fan is the best thing you can ask for. And then in the most Hollywood moment of my entire life, I was in a development meeting with Ron Howard. And I'm sitting there with Ron Howard talking about a script that I wrote. And I get a call from Jerry Bruckheimer. And Jerry basically says like, hey, Tom is in the office, and I know you don't want to do that role, but he would love to talk to you about it. I drove from that meeting straight over to go meet Tom. He was very, very smart. I walk into the room, first of all, and he's sitting kind of back to the door, and he stands up and he's like, hey, guys, everybody, there's a room full of like the top brass of the Navy, and they're all sitting there. And Tom stands up and he's like, hey, guys, everybody relax. Glenn, we're not going to try to convince you to do the movie, but here's my seat. Just sit down. We want to show you something. And I was like, okay. And it's basically the test footage of the interior cockpit footage of what all the actors are going to get to do in Top Gun, which is, when you see the movie, it is mind blowing. So Tom and I ended up, it's supposed to be just like a little bit of how I was kind of just seeing the character and why I didn't relate to that character and all that stuff. And it ended up turning into a much bigger conversation about how he approaches roles, how he approaches movies, how I view movies, how I view my career. And what it ended up doing is like, literally, I was getting film school, from Tom Cruise in a really bite-sized format. Essentially, Chris McQuarrie, Joe Kosinski, Tom, and Jerry, they all like watched the original Top Gun and figured out how to reconceptualize that character. And on the day, literally the day that Mission Impossible Fallout came out, I was walking in on that Friday. I was walking into the theater to go see Mission Impossible Fallout, and I got a call from Tom Cruise and Chris McQuarrie, who is the director of Mission Impossible Fallout and the writer of Top Gun. And they're like, can you talk right now? I was like, I'm actually walking into your movie right now. Can I call you in a couple hours? And they were like, absolutely. That's better use of your time. Tom, I called Tom back after talking to Chris McQuarrie about sort of the ebbs and flows of it. And I go, Tom, hey, I'm feeling something, man. He's like, what are you feeling? I was like, I'm feeling the need, man. I'm feeling the need. He's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. He's like, fuck yeah. I'll never forget that moment as long as I live, because it's like me sort of being on the losing side of something and then sort of having kind of this amazing second resurrection of sorts and getting to kind of develop this role with like all these guys who are my heroes. And I got to give them credit. They kept their word, and the character they pitched is what is in the movie. That's how I got the role. Yeah, it's a wild story.
No, that's a great story though, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's just like the icing on the cake. They wanted you, they went after you, and in a way where it became almost that they couldn't do it without you, you know? And this is the reasons why.
My mom says the same thing. You know, my mom is very like, you know, oh, they couldn't have done it without you. I'm like, they could have done it without me.
But they had choices, right? But they had choices. Yeah. You can't deny the fact that, so you must have struck a chord, and you know yourself. I mean, and it can be anything. It can be any work, you talked about relationships not 2 minutes ago. When it's right, it's right. You just know. And they had an inkling of something, whatever that spark is in your eyes, whatever it is that they saw. And remember, you are the cute guy. You are the new, right? You're like the new guy on the block. You're the one that is like got all the cuteness that they need for the show anyway.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, you know, we try. You know, it's probably due to the fake spray tan they made us get every week. The mandatory Top Gun spray tan.
But that's fantastic. But what a great opportunity, you know, in all of that being said. I mean, was it all, I love how you said that, you know, you were sitting in a room with all these generals. It's really funny. The celebration we're having with the Power Women, we celebrated the top female general there that trained Brie Larson for Captain Marvel.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it was just a small world of how the Army military help.
You know, that's actually one of the coolest things, I think, flying around with these guys. Like my favorite thing is like waking up in the morning and getting like, you look at my like text on my phone and it's all like call signs. It's like these real life pilots that are texting me, and they're all, you know, just funny call signs. But I think the coolest part for me was we were in this bar scene, and I'm sitting there, you know, and you just kind of, you're next to all these extras. So you just like kind of start chatting. And, you know, usually they're, you know, you're talking to aspiring actors, and, you know, people that are trying to get their, you know, Taft-Hartley, you know, to get into SAG and the whole thing. And you sort of kind of understand where they are in their career. But, you know, I'm starting to chat with some of these guys, and I'm like, wait, are you an actual pilot? And they're like, yeah, like I'm a naval pilot. I'm like, wait, what? And then I start talking to this guy. He's like a high-ranking admiral. I'm like, what are you guys all doing here? Like, there's like being extras, but the thing that made it really special is every single person in that bar was in that bar scene and doing the work of an extra because the first movie inspired them so much, right? And that first movie was the reason they became a pilot in the first place, the reason they became obsessed with the Navy, the reason they joined that family. Tom always said this phrase, pressure is a privilege, that I always think is a really great phrase that was so applicable to this movie, in the fact that what we were doing on this movie, there is a lot of pressure. It's like not an easy movie to make. It's a lot of movie with a lot of expectations. Everybody wants different things from the movie. It's a tone that sometimes doesn't really translate to this decade. You know, and the question of, does anybody under 30 even care? Like those sort of like thoughts. But then you look at the pilots that are in this bar and the impact that movie made on their life. And these are the guys that are protecting our country now. And I'm like, that's pretty damn cool. I got to say, it was a very eye-opening experience, because we even got to film on an aircraft carrier. Right. We got to film on the USS Roosevelt. And we were there for like a month, and literally I was telling some of my best friends are like, what was it like to film Top Gun? I was like, I was in the Navy for like a year and a half. It's basically like you weren't an actor. It didn't feel like you were an actor on this movie. It felt like we were living on naval bases. We were waking up with naval aviators. That sounds bad. Working out with them, eating with them, flying with them. And you go to bed and like you grab a drink with the O Club with them. And then that's your life.
So I have to ask, has it made you feel danger is a part of your life now? And are you looking to do your own stunts?
You know what's so funny is, so we did like a few reshoots, like just some small little bits they wanted to capture in the UK where Tom was shooting Mission. I went out to kind of just do some final little bits. And I asked Tom, I was like, hey, I want to go skydiving while I'm out there. I've never skydived before. Like, where do I go? He goes, okay, I got you a cool day on your day off. Like, I got something set up. I was like, all right, cool. His like pilot who trains him for everything picks me up in a helicopter, me and Monica Barbaro. And we fly to go with basically the UK skydiving team, like the official skydiving team. And we get down there and then we ended up getting winded out. It was too aggressive for us to go skydiving. When I got back to the States, I get a text from Tom like a little bit later, and he just said, hey man, you never followed up. And I was like, oh, what's up? And he's like, skydiving. You never followed up. Are you scared? And I'm like, no. What do you want me to do? And he's like, all right, when are you available? I was like, next week, I'm pretty open. In very Tom Cruise fashion, I get there and they're like, I was like, all right, cool. So like, how does this thing work? And they're like, well, we have to train you how to, jump out of the airplane and kind of maneuver around while you're up there. I'm like, well, am I like attached to somebody? He's like, no, it's just you. And I'm like, I've never done this before. They're like, no. Tom was adamant that you have to do it solo. It's the thing that I've realized what makes Tom really great as a person is everything that scares you on the other side makes you great. There are so many things now in my life where I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. And then I'm like, yeah, the fact that it scares the shit out of me is like what makes it exactly what I should run towards.
Tell us a little bit about what else you're working on.
There's this movie that I just finished shooting that Jonathan Majors and I are starring in together. It's, told during the Korean War, and it's this white pilot and this black pilot. The black pilot's the first African-American naval aviator. His name's Jesse Brown, and I play this guy, Tom Hudner. And it's sort of this like kind of unconventional friendship that ended up, leading to them becoming the most famous aviator duo in the Korean War. So another fighter pilot, very, many years prior, 70 years prior. And it's this sort of like amazing, sort of just like talks about them sort of being what the definition of being a wingman is. And it's really oddly so topical. And it sort of culminates in this, moment where Jesse Brown ended up getting shot down, like 40 miles into North Korea, and Tom Hudner had to crash land his plane to save him. And it was their sort of, this sort of moment and them trying to get out and all that. And it's a really beautiful story. You rarely see something of this scope that is this like, in my opinion, just like the reason you make movies. I didn't realize I got a birthday balloon for my buddy at the uniform.
Saw it. I couldn't say anything though.
That's funny. I'm going to do that for you. Hey, this is Glen Powell. You're watching New York Moves, and just remember to follow.